Welcome to episode 149 of the Customer Support Leaders Podcast. I'm Charlotte Ward. Today I'd like to welcome Steve Biederman for a fireside chat. I'd like to welcome to the podcast today Steve Biederman. Steve, it's lovely to welcome you to the podcast for the first time. Here today to join me for a fireside. Perhaps first you'd like to introduce yourself.
Of course, Charlotte, thanks for having me. Well, as you said, I'm Steve Biederman. I am a veteran of technology for specifically the contact center industry, where for the last 25 years I've developed software that is used by all the agents that call you at home, and you blame me for it. And I always say we make the gun, but we don't shoot it.
Okay, fair enough. I won't hold you too accountable then for those phone calls.
Thank you. Next time the phone rings at home, that could be a problem.
Okay, I'll bear that in mind. Thanks, Steve. So lovely to meet you. We've had a chat before, but this is one of the fireside sessions, and it's your first time here. So although I have noticed, of course, that we are not by a fire, we are by a piano, but glossing over that for now, for the benefit of our listeners, and a little reminder to you maybe, fireside sessions are where my guests bring the topic. So it's not me fielding the question to start the session off today. I understand you have a field you'd like to talk about, a topic you'd like to chat for about 25 minutes about.
Well, I really do. I'm very passionate about the idea of how do you use technology to communicate in a viable way so that you can reach people at their comfort level, and from a business level be expeditious and efficient, and center your activity on really the customer experience. You know, we hear a lot about customer experience these days, and I think everybody's talking CX, but the ideal of CX really has to be underlined with the ability to do it. How do I communicate, with the people I need to reach that are either my customers or even my prospects? So, and it's interesting, in our company, we've taken that vision that I've had and we've implemented it with the development of what we call an Omni Plus solution that allows really any business, but let's specifically talk about more of a contact center environment, to communicate on any level at any time in a comfortable fashion. And what does that mean? That really means that you have different ways to communicate. So you may be most comfortable communicating, Charlotte, on Facebook. Someone else that you know may be comfortable doing email, and someone else may like to go to websites and click and talk to somebody immediately. Or oftentimes people want to remain anonymous. So you'll see this often in the accounts receivable, the collections industry, to where, it's a little uncomfortable to talk about this bill you owe, but you're ready to pay it or at least negotiate a settlement. So how do you do that without having to be confrontational or talk directly with somebody? You can do that through other channels. And all of those channels are the availability that are out there today, but individually, right? So the homeowner or the consumer may want a single way to communicate, but if I am reaching a wide range of customers, I need to be able to give them the full experience. So if you want to talk to me through Facebook, I can do that, or WhatsApp, I can do that, or on and on and on.
So I think it's fair to say that probably most people listening to this podcast will be familiar with the phrase omni-channel as an approach to providing support. But you used something right at the start there, which was Omni Plus, which I'd kind of like you to give a little bit more context to. But I guess also perhaps just to dial back to what you also said at the beginning, which was interesting, which is it's about a level of comfort with customers, isn't it? That's how we always think of omni-channel. We think about it being a kind of convenience certainly, for customers and
Yes.
get maximizing their opportunity to contact us. But it is comfort as well, isn't it? So maybe you could talk a bit to that, but also explain what Omni Plus exactly is in that context as
Well,
well.
I will. To the second point you made, the comfort. If you're really interested and seriously endeavored to really embrace that customer's experience, you want to be able to speak to them in their way instead of the way you demand. Now, the conversation itself may need to go into the business rules that you have, but why not set that consumer, that customer at ease? And to do that, back to my earlier point, you want to give them their way of having comfort. And you need to be able to offer that flexibility. Listen, how many times have you called a very large company on the internet and or look to call them, or you're unhappy with the order that you have, and there's nobody to talk to? Or the only way you can communicate with them is through email, and then you cross your fingers that within the next week you may hear from them, and that you may or may not notice that return email even coming to you. And to me, that's about what a company wants to do for themselves. They want to limit the use of people. They want to limit the drama that goes with all the orders, and they want to not refund money when they don't have to. So my belief is the alternative to that is to give people the comfort of doing it in any way. And when I talk about Omni Plus, so Omni channels are really just the ability to well, let me back up. You have two types of channel discussions that have gone on in the last decade. One is multi-channel and one is omni-channel. And multi-channel is the ability to use different channels as a business, but an omni experience is a wrapper of all of those different medias, we call them, that you can communicate to somebody with, but retaining all of that client information in a single repository. So
Okay.
that's what it does. So if I am using a multi-channel environment, I've got different screens coming up, and I have a screen if I'm a business or an agent that offers chat, and I have another screen. I know I can do email. I have my email up, and I may have a video connection on another one. But an omni experience embraces all of those so that I can, within the same screen and that same client experience, gather and communicate. So I can be looking at your customer information. I can be talking to you just voice wise through a video or a voice connection. And then I can say, look, let me just send this email to you. Check your chat because I've just sent you the information and attached it to the chat. And all of that can be drawn back into the customer record so that everything, it doesn't really matter the way I talk to you or communicate it. It's all centralized in terms of the data, the communication. And that's what I call the plus side, which is great. I've communicated with you, but if I haven't gathered and remarked on the experience and documented and archived it, then the next time you call, there's going to be starting at square one again. So it's my responsibility to add the plus to it and say, here, I'm going to bring all of the messaging, all of the medias back into a single, easy to use approach.
Which makes it really accessible for anyone in the organization as well, I guess.
Exactly. I mean, I was working with a loan company, a national loan company in the States recently. And I had a mortgage and I was getting another mortgage for a new home that I'm buying. When I went to it, I immediately wanted to go and this is the loan company. I'd worked with them before. I gave them a call. And I said, I've worked with you before. I'd like to do this. And they said, well, who have you worked with? I said, well, don't you have that record handy? And well, I actually don't have the record handy, but I can look up the phone number for you to call that mortgage agent. Well, what a terrible experience. And they actually dropped me off the call with a phone number in the hope that I would call that next person. Well, what about if I look at it and I say, hey, I saw that you talked to Bill. I see that you have a loan with us, and I see that you like to communicate through video. So if you buy your laptop, let's do that and let's begin the discussion. That's the difference in an Omni plus approach and a normal business. And that's what the customer experience is so valuable that way.
Really builds that connection. In that circumstance, you absolutely got disconnected in every possible sense of the word. But this is about then building connections through that level of comfort for your clients.
It is, Charlotte. And I'll tell you one odd thing to me. These are major companies. And these are some of the largest companies, this one in America in their industry. And you say, why don't they have this? It's available. I'm not the only company that manufactures it. It's available and it's well tested and well used on the market. And why don't they? Well, that becomes the real issue with implementing things like an Omni solution, which is getting a business that's already financially successful and measurable to that success and disrupting their organization by bringing in something new for them where all of a sudden they have to change behaviors which can risk, they believe, their revenue. Yes, it may have a long-term upside, but how do you find the ability to carve out time and an approach to doing it? And the companies such as my own, NobleBiz, we do that. We understand that that's the complex piece, that large company, mortgage company should be implementing this, but they don't know how to do that while not disrupting their business. And so in the practical world, it's not that companies don't want a better customer experience. They don't know how to do it.
And I guess the bigger the company, the greater the pain in making that transition, right? I've worked for a relatively long time in relatively small organizations, which is an environment I really enjoy and I'm very comfortable in right now. And it does mean you can be really responsive and agile. You can change processes at the drop of a hat when your team is very small. I have also worked for those big organizations back in the day, and I know how long it took to kind of change a technology platform. One CRM to another was not a small project for a big...
No, and it's sign-offs and acceptance. And in large companies, oftentimes that middle layer of management changes in the middle of it, and you can be working towards something and it stops in the middle, and somebody who comes in has a new idea. And, I read an article where the Fortune 500 companies in their executive levels have an average of no more than 2 years per position before somebody moves to the next position.
Wow.
So initiatives begin and stop. But that doesn't happen in the small to medium companies. And interestingly, for us, implementing a large company versus a small company, it's technology, it's the same. So the truth is that we get to learn our trade through the small to medium companies, which we've done, prove the concept, and then be available to the larger ones when somehow they find the time and the method and the way to do it.
Yeah. I guess another challenge in those big organizations that I've certainly encountered is that they're quite often constructed of, say, through acquisitions or whatever, they're quite often constructed through a lot of different businesses that have been brought together and have somehow kind of struggled along.
Silos.
But just kind of managed for quite a while, and then they realize, what, we better standardize a bit here. Is that a big challenge for you when it comes to also rolling out the technology as well as the business practices?
It's both. It's a challenge and it's an opportunity, obviously, to grow. We had a customer which was a very large BPO, and they had been going through a process over the last, some years of acquiring competitors. So they went out, and by the time we were invited in to look at what they had purchased 11 companies. So they had their company and 11 companies, so 12 companies. And they were all contact center. And so they had, I think it was 40,000 agents spread out between all these companies. every single company, every single one, they had a different call center system. They had a different CRM. So every company, they're trying to manage through 12 different things. So why they called us in was simply, can you give us a way to connect all of these companies? Well, it's very easy to do. It's just you implement a single CRM and a single call center, contact center system, in our case, an Omni Plus system too. And then you segment the way they choose to segment their business. So now all of a sudden, instead of siloing all their employees to different business approaches, they now have a workforce of 40,000 people that is versatile, agile, and can be moved and used in any environment that they choose to do it, and segregated when they need to do it too. But yeah, I mean, we see this all the time, and it really happens because companies that buy companies want an immediate accretive approach to that. And they need to go to their shareholders and say, look, I bought this company and it has this value and I'm now getting a quick return on it. There's not a slow return model for most acquisitions. So it's just, look, we bought it, it's making money, let's use it. Let's get some synergies by maybe reducing staff where we have overlap, but let's let them keep running for a while. Well, remember I said every 2 years you're changing management, and so the long-term solution or midterm, which is finding this wrapper around them, doesn't ever get implemented. And what was a 2-year plan now becomes a 5 to 10-year plan, and they still have those silos. And it's inefficient, it's unreasonable, and it's oftentimes the way it goes.
Mm-hmm. And at those kind of time spans, you're also talking about aging technologies, increasingly embedded silos and business practices, which just makes the job harder the longer you leave it.
You know, you reminded me in saying that about a large public company that was they were selling insulin for Medicare for older patients, and they were all doing manual dialing. They had 700 agents in this huge kind of a operation, a single operation, and they were all hand dialing. Well, they were making money and successful, and they just simply brought us in to automate what had, instead of hand dialing, to do predictive dialing and just voice connections in a more efficient way. All of the 700 people were commissioned. So the more contacts and the more sales they made, obviously that was going to improve with an automated approach. You can do 10, 15 times the amount of contacts. But when we came to implement it, the employees holistically were against it. We were the Antichrist when we walked in there to put in the technology. So the best people absolutely didn't want it. They didn't say, if I'm good now, I can be 10 times as good. They didn't say that. They said, oh my God, change is bad. And it took a long time to get them convinced. Eventually what we did is just so you know, we decided to put it into one team of, I think it was 150 agents. We just put it in there, and they started to raise their sales very quickly. And then they set up a practice of saying at the end of every month, when activity gets very high, we're going to give the 150 best agents the ability to call off of this automation. And they used to call it then the money machine, because they knew that if they could get logged into that system, they could make more money. And so we had to internally gamify them into a way that it finally got accepted. Why don't we do this to the whole operation? And eventually we did.
Yeah, that makes sense. Making it a success in a small part for a small group of people. They effectively become your internal champions then, don't they?
Yes, they do. I forgot one point. We took the least productive people and put them in that 150-person team.
Oh,
so
really?
The higher production people started to get that distance between they and the lower producers that gap filled, and they were like, well, wait a minute, they shouldn't be doing this. We're the best producers. We should get this.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's interesting to think about gamifying it at the individual contributor level. Do you have problems with all of those managers, with all of that middle management layer that's there just for 2 years?
That's the problem. I mean, I wouldn't say that that's a problem, oh my God, but where we really have to finesse it per se is with that middle layer of manager, because they've learned their job. They've learned how to motivate their work groups to the level of whatever their resources are that they use. And at the end of the day, you're now bringing in something new and they have to learn it. There's new behaviors, there's new measurement, there's new reporting, there's new ways to incentivize and manage your people. And if you add to that something like gamification, as we just talked about, they're like, if you have to trick us into doing this, why should we do it? Obviously, it should speak for itself. And we say the same thing, it should. But that's up to you. You have to allow it. You have to be willing to go to the effort. And unfortunately, I call it a level of corporate mid-level mediocrity that can go on in large companies. I know that's kind of harsh, but that level is moving pieces, but they don't want to take the challenge of changing their own behaviors and doing additional work to gain their own success and income. Obviously, that's a broad statement. There are great people, and excellence is going on every level, or a company wouldn't be successful. But I do see that layer happening.
Mm-hmm. So I guess, even if they are terribly good at what they do, it's still potentially the hardest layer in an organization to sell it to effectively, isn't it? Even if they do make a success of it, how do you sell that technology and the change of practices? Because also, I guess there's very little opportunity for gamification at that layer, isn't there?
There is, because that's not the layer you're really gaming, right? You're gaming your contact center, those thousands of people logging in every day and communicating, the people that really are making the business, the money, having the direct relationship with the customer experience. So oftentimes what happens is this: you'll get a team that comes in, and maybe from the CEO level in medium-sized companies and small to just a group that is an innovation group within a large operation. And they'll come in and they'll say, this is the benefit, here's what we want to do. And they contact us and they're highly motivated. They want to implement something new for production, for the excellence that they see. But they are not the best at getting with that business to figure out how to get everybody else enthusiastic about it. And so they look to us to do that. And and really that's a big part of what NobleBiz does, is we learn about what their outcomes are that they want. So it's not how do you get to your outcome, it's tell us what your outcome is and what those pieces that are critical to your business and that you're looking to improve. And then we can come in and share the strategies that we've seen hundreds of times with other businesses, how they've implemented it successfully in an opportunistic way and in a way that is inclusive of everyone. And I would tell you this: we are a technology developer. We certainly, in today's age, Omni Plus is our driver. It changes all the time as the years go. You're adding new technologies, but it's just technology. Okay. The real key is, how do I integrate that technology into the working environment so they can be successful using it? And you have to love the customer. You have to care about the outcome, and you have to then lead that with caring about what that business model is and what's important to them. So it's not listening to us. It's not just saying, here's how you turn a machine on. It's saying, here's how we use a machine, we'll call it a machine, within your environment in the best way for you, that gives you some comfort and gives you the outcome you're looking for.
And I guess just back to the start also gives your clients that comfort, right? I guess brings us completely full circle. I think this has been super interesting. We started out talking about omnichannel and OmniPlus, but I feel like we've covered everything from, business structure and practices to gamification to difference between, huge organizations and startups and kind of everything in between. And I think just to finish, perhaps, considering those differences between large organizations and small organizations, particularly, I know that this is of interest, particularly to me, having been in both environments, and therefore I hope and assume it will be of interest to our listeners as well. But I feel like I want to ask this question mostly for me. What do you think either side of that coin can learn from the other then when it comes to thinking about this omnichannel approach?
Every company was small at one time, and every company became large because they really optimized that customer relationship and that they were versatile and agile. And it's really important for the larger companies to understand what is the organic nature of what they do. Forget my infrastructure, forget all of my processes. All of those are important, don't get me wrong. But let's go back to the basic thing. Why did I lose that sale to a small company when I am the largest company in the world doing something? You lost it because you weren't versatile, you weren't intimate with that customer experience. Now, on the other hand, you have a small company that may in some ways be saying we're better than the big company, but the only way they can really implement being better is by implementing processes and approach and formalizing what those large companies are successful at through programs like Six Sigma. So it's really no one is better than anyone else. Think about the client experience. That's the whole point. Think about the passion that you have and not just the dollar at the end of the game. Do right things right. And whether you're small or large, do it well. Do it as formally but as intimately as you can, using things like OmniPlus. It allows you to communicate easily, gather the data in a central location, and be more interested in the client experience. Focus on that, and frankly, I guess a simple summary to that is large, small, or in between, care about the customer and think about what do they need, not what do I need from my customer.
That's it for today. Go to customersupportleaders.com/149 for the show notes, and I'll see you next time.